Good morning, State Superintendent Thurmond. Welcome
Morning, Mayor.
again. We're thrilled you're here to speak with us and very grateful for your time. As you can imagine, we here of the California State Democratic Party Children's Caucus are concerned with children's issues, and there's no one quite so central to children's issues as you, our statewide chief administrator of public instruction. So welcome. A word here that we are recording, that we have muted our members while we're talking here in this conversation. I'm not sure what your time looks like, but if there's time afterwards for Q&A from the floor, that would be wonderful. Please drop your questions into the chat and we will definitely collect them all and do our very best to get them addressed at some point. And right now, I'd love to ask you please to give us a word of introduction from you about whatever you'd care to share, perhaps priorities since your election in 2019, or a word about your background or interests, your goals or vision. Please tell us about yourself as you see fit.
Give me just 1 second. Let me set the mute. Just give me 1 minute. All right, Tony, you're just going to need to unmute yourself and you're good to go. And our co-host can also unmute. Thank you, team. Let's see. Tony, were you able to get yourself unmuted? Oh, he came back in as a non-co-host. Can you make him a co-host for me? There we go.
It is
Perfect.
unmuted now.
You're good.
Are you all able to see and hear me okay? Great. Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be here with the Children's Caucus. Many of you know that my career has been in social work for many years, working with young adults as they transition out of foster care and working with families who have children and adults with developmental disabilities. And so the work that you all do is very important to me. I can tell you as a state superintendent, I have responsibility for 1,000 school districts and that serve our nearly 6 million students. And that means mostly getting resources to our schools because each of those 1,000 school districts has its own school board that makes their governing decisions. But we do our best to provide support, to provide guidance, and to intervene when necessary. I'm very proud of the work that we've done at the department. We have now been able to guarantee preschool for every 4-year-old in our state. Many of those preschool programs are free, like our universal transitional kindergarten. I can't think of a more impactful program when you think about what we do to lift students out of poverty, to help their families, and to help students prepare for a great future. As someone who grew up on the free lunch program, it's also a source of great pride that we've been able to now provide universal meals to every California student. 2 meals a day for free, regardless of your background or where you live. And it's so important because we have so many students and families who are hungry and looking for resources, and it's a barrier when you don't have um, uh, access to food and other resources that you need. I'm grateful that our state is leading every other state in what we do to help our students coming out of the pandemic, recognizing that it was a great challenge when you think of the Californians and Americans who lost their lives to COVID, and of course the impacts to our students. Our students started the pandemic, and we had to be in distance learning, and our students in this state, believe it or not, didn't have the basic tools that they need. So many students didn't have a computer or access to high-speed internet. And so we launched this task force on closing the digital divide. And we were able to source almost 1 million computing devices. And we were also able to secure $7 billion to create broadband all throughout our state, including in our rural communities, so that we can have broadband all over our state. And so, and we also recognize that our students had academic challenges. We've provided our schools with $7 billion to provide what's called learning recovery activities. And that means high dose tutoring or making the school year longer, providing enrichment and supports, expanded learning after school time. But we also address our students' mental health needs. And I'm grateful Senator McGuire and I wrote a bill together that provides the resources to allow us to recruit 10,000 mental health clinicians in our state to address for schools to address the mental health needs of our students. I would just say at the top of the talk, Madam Chair, if anyone on the Zoom knows someone who wants to become a teacher or who wants to become a mental health clinician in our schools, that we have a $20,000 scholarship to provide for them, and that we would invite you to reach out to us at teachandca@cde.ca.gov, and we can connect you with resources on how to get access to that scholarship to get a credential to be a teacher or to be a mental health clinician. I'm joined today by Karen Scherer, who is an active member of the California Democratic Party, who also works on teacher recruitment, who is a teacher herself, and who's an elected school board member in the Oxnard Union High School District. And together we'd be happy to help anyone who'd like to become a teacher. I'm sharing with you these positive things happening in our state because I want to be strength-based. I have to acknowledge that there are many challenges facing our students, as there are those who seek to bring harm and hate to students of color and to LGBTQ plus students. And as a result, I've written legislation to block book banning. I believe that there's no place for banning books in the state of California or anywhere in the nation, but we've written a bill that will help to block book banning. We've also, I'm sponsoring legislation as we speak to create an office of civil rights and investigations at the Department of Education, because there are so many districts that are pursuing policies that we know will hurt our kids, like forced outing policies. I can think of nothing more important than helping to defeat a potential ballot measure, should it qualify, that says under the rubric of parent rights that essentially what it would do is it would create forced outing policies all across our state. And it's very important that we defeat this measure if the signatures are collected and it reaches the ballot. But we have been busy going from district to district, challenging districts that have brought forward these forced outing policies. Some of you know I went to Chino Valley Unified School District last year to speak up for LGBTQ plus students who felt that they were being targeted and bullied. And I spoke out about why I felt that their forced outing policy violates the law. And I talked about how, targeting our LGBTQ plus kids hurts them. Statistics show that 40% of students who identify as in the LGBTQ plus community have considered suicide. And so I brought that to the board. And of course, the board shut me down and sent 7 armed guards to remove me from the meeting. And I started getting threats immediately after that. But I'll show up at any district to challenge these policies. I worked with the Attorney General and got the Attorney General to bring a lawsuit against Chino Valley Unified. Because my office can't bring a lawsuit, I submitted what's called an amicus brief, a letter in support of the lawsuit. And a judge has provided an injunction to block the implementation of the forced outing policy at Chino Valley. Unfortunately, there are other districts that are quickly passing these measures. They're banning things like critical race theory. We don't teach critical race theory in California, but we do teach ethnic studies so that students have a chance to learn about the contributions of their ancestors. And it helps students of color to be successful. It helps students from all backgrounds to be successful. And we will continue to champion these programs to help our students in our state. And so I thank you to the members of the Children Caucus for your interest. I hope that you will follow the legislation that we have to create the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education. It's AB 1421, and it is authored by, SB 1421. And it is authored by Senator Henry Stern, who I've been working closely with to address hate, to address anti-Semitism, to address Islamophobia, to address hate of any kind. There's no place for hate in our schools or in our communities. And I've made a pledge that anywhere where there is action of hate in our schools, that I will go to those places and work with those school districts to address it. And we will continue to stand against those who bring hate against our students of color, against our LGBTQ plus students, because inclusive education means that students from all backgrounds do better. Simply put, students, when they have access to ethnic studies, they do better. And when students have access to resources to support our LGBTQ plus students, they do better. And so we'll be standing in the gap of those who intend to bring hate. And what I would ask from all of you is to do what you always do, organize. We have to elect progressive school board members who will take up their responsibility to serve every student and every child and every family instead of bringing hate. When you're a school board member, and to any of you who are elected, thank you. Having served as one, I know how hard the job can be, but it is the most important of our elected roles when it comes to the ability to help our students get access to a great education. It saved my life, you know, as someone who grew up in a household where I lost my only parent, my mom, to cancer. My dad was a Vietnam vet who never came home from the war. I was sent to live with a cousin who I never met till I showed up on her doorstep. And she raised us and she emphasized the value of education. There were many times when we didn't have food in my household. We grew up on the free lunch program, on food stamps, and on a whole lot of government cheese provided by the USDA. And these public programs helped my family to overcome poverty. The most important program that helped me was the ability to get a great education. And we must protect public education and ensure that the promise is kept for all of our nearly 6 million students in the state. So, Madam Chair, I'll stop there, see if there are some questions or some other points that you all would like me to speak to. I thank you all for the work that you do, for making this a great state, and for taking up these issues of how we protect our students against the hate that we're seeing rise in California schools.
Well, thank you very much, because indeed, I agree completely that these issues of protecting our children against these assaults right now, it's top of mind really for everyone. So thank you for just speaking to that. That's what everyone pretty much is here to hear about. So the Office of Civil Rights that you are, is that what it is called for SB 241? I'm forgetting.
Yes.
Is that how does this intersect with Ed Code and the work of the Attorney General's office? Is this an efficient way to be, protecting our students' civil rights? Can you speak to those civil rights?
Yes, you know, the Attorney General's office really is the only office that has any enforcement provisions. And in this area of the law, specifically as it relates to the forced outing, the law has been interpreted differently by judges. Some judges have said students have a right to privacy and that the district should not interfere. Other judges have ruled that there is no clear right to privacy. And so the Attorney General's office is the only statewide constitutional office with any actual enforcement power. But between the Attorney General's office and my office, there's very limited capacity to even investigate claims of hate. In my office, we don't have investigators. And so the Office of Civil Rights would create staff who can be investigators to go out. We've investigated in spite of not having the staff. We've just stretched ourselves because there's law called the Uniform Complaint Process that allows any citizen to make a complaint about something happening in a school district. And the school district is required to investigate those complaints. But as these complaints have come in about these wayward school boards, these MAGA conservative school boards that were attacking kids, it seemed to me, why should they be allowed to investigate themselves? And so while we're typically the agency that takes up the appeal of a uniform complaint process, we made the decision in many cases to be the first level investigator so that the MAGA conservative school board members weren't investigating themselves. We know what their ruling would be. And so we've investigated several, and we've made rulings where we felt that the rights of students were being violated and that their policies would violate. And so SB 1421 would give us additional capacity to investigate because unfortunately there's so many cases all across the state. In the Inland Empire, in Orange County, there's been at least one situation in the Bay Area. We just want to have additional capacity to investigate any form of hate that might be perpetuated against students and families in our schools.
Thank you. So more generally, with regard to Ed Code, then if you say you don't have investigative powers within the CDE, how does ed code get regulated? How does it wind up playing out at the school site? And I think in particular, a lot of our members wonder how we can actually interact with that regulation. Is there an office where people can interface and share their experiences and maybe understand where support might come from? I think this is of keen interest to many people. Is there an annual review of LEA policies for compliance with ed code? We'd love to know how to interact more directly with the CDE about, issues that seem to be out of compliance.
There are levels of compliance in almost every area. For, say, special education, for example, there are staff at the department who do monitor the manner in which districts carry out policies. And when a district falls outside of those policies, the staff at the department will write up some compliance orders. At the end of the day, the greatest power that CDE has to, while we don't have formal enforcement authority over a district, we believe that we have the ability to withhold funding to districts that take actions that will harm students. And so, as a result of the bill that I helped to write, AB 1060, this is the bill that says there shall be no banning of books in the state of California. And if a district bans a book, we can assess fees to that district and cause them to reverse their actions. And this happened in Temecula Valley, the first district to flat out ban critical race studies. And this district banned the implementation of a curriculum because it had representation of LGBTQ plus Americans in it. And we used the provisions of AB 1060 to block that district's actions, and they ultimately reversed their policy. And so it's a tangled web of things that the Department of Education does, but we do monitor districts. I mean, there's 1,000 of them. And so I think the most important thing that anyone can do from the standpoint of their local district is to attend school board meetings, to monitor activities there, to vote, and to help elect progressive school board members. I'm grateful to the folks out at Orange Unified School District, one of the places where a forced outing policy was passed. We worked together to be able to recall the board members who brought forth this policy, and now have the chance to have progressive school board members serving there. And so we encourage anyone to reach out to us if there are concerns about any policy. And any citizen in our state, any person can file a uniform complaint. We call it a UCP, a uniform complaint, if they feel that there is a violation of ed code in any way. And we welcome anyone to contact us directly.
Well, thank you, because I think there have been a lot of questions about, the potential annual, review for compliance or these things. So I think we do know about the UCP, but I hear complaints, and perhaps there will be issues that are posted in the chat about consistency of those being followed up on across the state. I know this is an issue from the past, but also speaking, I mean, so I hear you saying also that your regulation comes in terms of money and monetary policy. As we all know, there's rather a shortage of that at Sacramento this year, and a lot of concern about, how this will play out. There's concern about enrollment, how we address enrollment without pitting schools against one another. There's concern. We received a question about, given the ongoing budget crisis and state of the unifieds, which entity should realistically be liable for employee pensions? There's concern about school boards and superintendents laying off teachers, teachers' assistants, and classified school employees. And there's concern, of course, for winding up with schools that are adequately staffed. What sorts of ideas do you have for addressing this budget crunch that we're facing?
Yes, I'm going to ask my staff if they can get a bill number for me. For the last 3 years, 2 years, I have sponsored legislation that will change the way enrollment happens in our state, because with enrollment comes dollars or the loss of dollars. And California is the only state, well, I'm sorry, California is one of maybe a handful of states that still makes decisions based on average daily attendance. When a student is there, the school gets money. When the student is absent, the school loses money. The legislation that I am sponsoring, and I want to thank the California School Employees Association for being the creator of it and giving me the opportunity to co-sponsor it, would create a stable set of funding dollars for enrollment, because it would change the system from average daily enrollment to enrollment to an enrollment system, from average daily attendance to an enrollment-based attendance system, and it would create a stable set of funding for our schools while we continue to work on reducing chronic absenteeism and making sure that our students are in school every day. It would also provide dollars for outreach specialists who can go and visit the homes of children who may be missing school. At the end of the day, the only way we're going to be able to tackle the declining enrollment is to create programs that bring families back to our schools. We saw population growth has been declining in California for at least the last 2 decades. But we've seen significant enrollment decline get exacerbated during the pandemic. People didn't check in for school. We believe that people either left their district, left the state, left the country. And so we have to find ways to offset that significant declining enrollment that occurred as a result of the pandemic. I've sponsored legislation to help schools strengthen their academic offerings by becoming dual language immersion schools, by becoming STEAM academies. That these are programs that are so proven that parents want to be in schools that have them. And my counsel to schools is to create these programs to attract new enrollment to these schools. And so we're working through it. We've done everything that we can to help school districts. We gave them guaranteed funding despite declining enrollment over the last few years since the pandemic. But that guarantee is now ended. And so now what you're seeing is districts are feeling the pinch of declining enrollment at a time when costs to run a school continues to rise. And so this year's proposed budget, while we have a state deficit that is in the billions, upwards of 78 billion, California schools have largely been shielded from cuts from the state and are offered a small cost of living adjustment. Now, our budget won't be finalized until May, in what's called the mid-year revision, when the governor and the legislature will work together to finalize a budget. But so far, in every action that's been taken by our legislature, they took an early action to make certain cuts overall in the state. Those cuts have not impacted California schools. And so we will continue to protect California schools and support them. But yet, even with that protection, there are just challenges, and our schools need more resources. And we are providing them with resources for very specific programs, but a lot of that funding is one time, and our schools need permanent funding. We need to create a permanent revenue opportunity for California schools to get more money. A lot of you know that I supported a ballot measure during the pandemic that would have made changes to Prop 13 so that big corporations would give more money. It would have sheltered and shielded small businesses and people who own a few residential properties, but big corporations would have had to have given more money for schools, for police and fire services, for county services, for healthcare services. That measure failed. The voters voted against it. There was a very misleading campaign against the measure by business interests. And so we have a very lopsided way of funding our schools. And my goal is to create permanent revenue for California schools that they can count on, stable revenue that they can count on. During the pandemic, we were able to fund our schools in a way that we moved from being somewhere around 30th in the nation in per pupil spending to about 12 or 13. But I want to keep working with our schools until we can say that what we provide for our students makes us number one in the nation in per pupil spending, and that we provide for all the needs of California schools and students.
Oh, thank you. I think it's SB 98 that you're talking about, for changing an ADA from attendance to enrollment. I understood that is to become a study bill.
The price tag to move from average daily attendance to average daily enrollment is so significant that the bill um, is often saddled with becoming a study bill. And last year, the bill didn't get out of the Appropriations Committee. And so this is a long-term effort. There are some who estimate that moving to this type of system would mean that the state would have to give schools about $1 billion or more. And because of the price tag, it's the reason that it's a study bill. It's the reason, you're correct, it is SB 98 by Senator Portantino and co-sponsored by the California School Employees Association in my office. But because of the cost, it has been difficult to get this bill through the legislature.
Very, very frustrating. And I think there are many of us on this call who would like to like to advocate as best we can. So as well as I know that the initiatives that are coming down the pike and SB 98 and the one you mentioned for the Office of Civil Rights, we'd love to know how we can partner and advocate ourselves out here best for these kinds of things. So maybe we can work together with your office more closely as a group here. You'd also mentioned in your introduction, you were talking about the ramping up of technology and the utilization under the pandemic. We have a new concern on the horizon about education data and technology. So I know at the state level, CalPADS is very, very heavily protected, but I'm wondering about the sort of disconnect between regulation and protection at the state level and the district level as this promise of AI just overtakes us. What kind of protection, what kind of role can the CDE play for everyone's data, students, families' data, as we all so enthusiastically rush towards this AI? Is this a concern that the CDA can be involved with, the protection of our data for our children, the way you've done such a good job with CalPADS?
We are concerned always that data be protected, and we have strict provisions, as you mentioned, in CalPADS. That's our statewide data system, and districts, upload information about students' performance on standardized tests or attendance in other areas, and allows us to build a statewide picture of how our students are doing. And it is deeply protected. But many districts, including our largest district in the state, Los Angeles Unified, have experienced breaches in data from cybersecurity hacks. And one of the things that I think that we can do is to continue to train our students, our future workforce, to work in cybersecurity. School districts and cities have been hacked into by those who would hold these jurisdictions hostage for ransom. And so while it is a challenge, it creates a great opportunity for us to prepare our students for great jobs of tomorrow in cybersecurity. And a lot of our school districts offer cybersecurity as a training program. And our students can earn great wealth and income by working in cybersecurity. It is one of the key pathways that I think is going to help our students to be able to grow into jobs where they can afford to stay in California. We all know that the cost of living has gone out of control in the state, and we're losing people. And so I believe that technology jobs, like jobs in healthcare and other fields, can make a great difference. It's why this year, I sponsored legislation to make sure that we have a computer science graduation requirement so that our students can all learn how to code, whether they enter into the technology field or not. That is a great marketable skill. And for those who do learn how to code and who do want to enter into the profession, this could be a tremendous opportunity for them. You mentioned AI, and let me just say this: I do not think that artificial intelligence. I don't think there's ever a time where a computer can replace the good work that anyone does, especially our teachers or our classified staff. And I think when people put forward artificial intelligence as a method of doing work to save money on staffing, or I think that their motivations are misguided. Um, and so we are helping to lean forward to address people's concerns about AI. There are many companies that are promoting AI in education. And so what we've done is we're working to create some guidance on how AI can be useful in the education space. I do believe that AI can be useful as an aid to schools to organize data, to manage data, to identify ways to support student success. In some states, AI is being used to teach computer science to teachers so that they can then go and teach their students how to code. And so to make sure that we find the right balance, I'm sponsoring legislation that would create what's called an AI work group to really define how AI can be used to advance the needs of our students and our educational system, to set some parameters. People have a lot of concerns about Chat GPT and how to ensure that AI is not misused. And so our office has already put out guidance to schools that talks about how to use AI, but we anticipate providing more should this AI work group be established. And I would say that we're at the beginning, but I've also created a STEAM advisory council where I want those who work in technology to work alongside of our schools to help inform our school teams about how we prepare students for these jobs of tomorrow and to help them to be prepared for good paying jobs that will help them to maintain themselves and their families in this economy.
And that's interesting. I mean, there's not just a content and sort of pedagogy component to this of how AI can be utilized. There's also a labor component and how it generates the capacity that it does on the intellectual property of our teachers, our staff, our children whose learning and progress is protected, their privacy. So it's a difficult catch-22. I do agree that there's promise there, but I think there's concern about how this can be done ethically from even just a labor standpoint.
If anyone is aware of any breach of privacy, please contact us. We will be happy to address them. You can always contact us about any civil rights concerns at our office of at what's called the Office of Equal Opportunity at the Department of Education. And I'm going to ask one of my team members to put it in the chat, but it's oeoinfo@cde.ca.gov. And I would just say at any time, if there's any breach or concern about a breach of privacy for students and families, to contact us, and we will be happy to look into it and to address the issue.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I understand your time is limited. I would love to hear a touch, if possible, from you about, the mental health and social well-being of our students. This is, another topic foremost on so many people's minds. I don't know if you've time to address that.
Of course, always. Very, very pleased that we were able to secure the funding to recruit 10,000 mental health clinicians. But we have to find those clinicians, and that is a challenge for every state. And so, in the meantime, we are able to provide wraparound supports to our schools through what's called community schools. We provide $4 billion to our schools to have these wraparound supports for health, mental health, social services, whatever is needed to remove any barriers that are in the way of our students. But we have a lot of work to do. We have 200,000 homeless students in our state. there are 10,000 of those students who are unaccompanied and on their own. And if we don't support them, they will become homeless adults. And so we are working now to create the funding to build housing units, subsidized units for those unaccompanied homeless students so that they can get a place to live and get wraparound supports to learn how to live independently and to be able to be connected to school, to be connected to jobs. And we think that this is one of the most important things that we can do. It's so important, and it's why you all probably heard I've declared my candidacy to run for governor in 2026, where I've named my top priority addressing homelessness in the state and building affordable housing. And part of addressing homelessness means also providing mental health supports and providing substance abuse supports for those who are currently unhoused on the streets of California. It's a daunting problem. I know there are no easy answers, but I know and believe that we can do better for the people of this state. And we have to provide supportive housing that has embedded in it services for mental health and supports. Our state now has $1 billion more to use for mental health supports for the homeless, for veteran services as a result of the passage of Prop 1. And I want to see that those dollars get spent equitably in the communities that need them. For any community, whether it be urban, suburban, rural, or frontier, for communities of color, for immigrant communities, we want to make sure that we continue to support those who have needs. And we know that many times there are mental health needs that must be addressed. We must address the fentanyl crisis. We must address substance abuse in a holistic way and in a way that helps individuals to be supported and to overcome the challenges that they face. This state has been good to me. As the son of immigrants who came here, my family came here from places like Panama and Jamaica and Colombia. And for me, the son and descendant of immigrants and slaves, to have the opportunity to spend these last 16 years as an elected official serving this community and trying to make things better, I would like to bring my experience to bear to help make our state better. And I'm not looking to help millionaires and billionaires, but I'm looking to help those who've been the least among us, and our working class families and our middle class families, and those who've been pushed out of our state, who need an opportunity to be supported. And I invite any of you who are interested in what we're doing to visit my campaign at tonythurmond.com. You can learn about the work that we've done, the paid internship programs I've created for young people, 13 to 24, the homelessness summits that I'm convening to marshal resources to build affordable housing and supportive housing for those who are unhoused. The work that we're doing to build teacher housing and workforce housing and to build housing for Californians all across the state. I invite you to learn about that, and I hope that you all work with us on our journey to make California a better state for all of us.
Well, thank you. I really want to sincerely thank you for spending your Saturday morning with the CDP Children's Caucus. I appreciate the time. I have to say we have so many more questions. Would it be all right with you and your staff if I compiled these and forward them along? Is that
sure.
possibility? Oh, that'd be wonderful, because I'm
That's
sure
fine.
they're disappointed they can't be asking some of these questions in the chat.
If you want, I'll stay a few more minutes and answer questions, and also happy to get the compilation of questions, however you, or a combination, however you wish for this to go.
Karen, is this working for you all? More time?
This is Superintendent Thurmond's meeting. I'm going to defer to him. So
That's
I think
wonderful.
we were scheduled until 10, so I'll leave it up to him. We're already a few minutes over.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, if you could give me 60 seconds, I just have to make sure that this device won't log off. And I'll be happy to take a few questions if I just turn my camera off for about 60 seconds.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Maybe Sarah, while we're waiting, we can share about the hybrid executive board meeting we're going to be having, the meeting in San Diego. Do you want to drop that information in the chat?
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And also remind people that we really appreciate your membership dues, if that's a possibility. We actually had a lifetime membership sign up from somebody today. That's really much appreciated. And there are levels, you will see that, and Liz will drop that information in the chat as well. May 17th, we're meeting in San Diego. We will have a hybrid meeting available, but the meetings are available for you to attend in person as well. You don't have to buy a membership. You don't have to pay for registration to the eBoard conference if you're interested in coming to any of the caucus meetings. They're open to one and all. Do we have specific questions I have more questions myself, but if there are any burning questions here from the floor, maybe we should ask you to raise your hand.
I've collected the ones in the chat, Sarah. Do you want me to get the ones that haven't been shared yet?
That would be fine. Let's have one question here, very, very short, from Ms. Stapleton, and then I think we probably do need to we'll ask you to put your questions in the chat and we'll forward them to the staff, but maybe we can just do a quick question, one quick from Ms. Stapleton.
Okay, let's see. She got unmuted. Perfect. And Tony, are you available?
Oh my.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I was wondering what your position was on teaching peace in schools. That would be including, of course, conflict resolution and whatnot, and to curtail the violence that happens from the bullying and people wanting to recruit kids into gangs and so on and so forth. And you know, the fact that my understanding is that there has been programs put forth, and I know the Los Angeles Unified was supposed to be teaching peace in schools, but that program is sitting on the shelf and not being done. So I was wondering what your thoughts are in terms of making that mandatory.
Well, that would require legislation. And then to make it mandatory would require legislation, and then it would have to get sent to the State Board of Education to create the curriculum that would go with it. We do have ways, our history of social science frameworks encourages schools to consider teaching on topics like peace and topical subjects. But there is not a current mandate for teaching peace across the schools, and there's nothing that will be uniform. Whenever something becomes a requirement, the state requires that there be a curriculum developed as a model to give school districts an opportunity to understand how to provide that, and then to provide training to educators. And so it's a topic I'm happy to look into, but there currently is not a requirement to teach peace in our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see so many other questions, and I understand, though, that you need to run to the next engagement. So I would like, please, Ms. Nielsen, please stick your questions in the chat, and I promise we will send them along. And I thank you again. In fact, I understand, Superintendent, you need to run, but if anyone else wishes to stay on the chat with us, we can spend another half hour chatting among ourselves if that's of interest to people. I'll hold the chat open. Okay, I mean the Zoom open for that. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thanks for being great Democrats and for supporting children, and we'll look forward to seeing you in our work in the field. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Bruce.
Here.